This is CBC Saturday News.
This is what's gripping the GTA tonight, a deep freeze that's prompted Environment Canada to issue extreme cold warnings. It's all part of an intense winter storm slamming eastern Canada and the U.S. We have full team coverage for you tonight. Our Kaillie Humphries is live for us in Hamilton, and Lorenda Redekop is standing by in Toronto. But let's first go to Kaillie, who is in downtown Hamilton. Kaillie, how hard is the storm hitting there tonight?
Well, Maribel, as you can see, the snow is still coming down. It has been coming down since early this morning. Now, a winter storm warning remains in effect for the Hamilton area. Now, originally 15 to 25 centimeters of snow was predicted, but Environment Canada has since changed its tune. It says we can now expect 20 to 40 centimeters of snow by the time the storm is over, and some parts even up to 45 centimeters of snow. Now, I was driving around all day. There weren't too many vehicles on the roads. I didn't see any major accidents. I did stumble upon one vehicle crash in Old Ancaster on the mountain. Now, that's where a vehicle had spun out of control, the driver crashing his vehicle into a hydro pole and knocking it down. And other than that, I saw a few cars skidding here and there, but nothing too major. Drivers seem to be driving slowly and very cautiously. And as I mentioned, not many cars on the roads today. Now, I also spoke to some people that were walking around the city out and about, and many of them, at least all the ones I spoke to, they were pretty excited about this snowfall.
Very wonderful. It's a bit scary and unsafe, but I still think it's quite lovely.
It's good for the skiers and I love it, but we needed all this at Christmas time, folks.
You're a fan of the snow.
Yeah, I am.
And Mom is a fan of the snow as well?
I am. Ask me that again in about end of March. I might have a different answer, but today it's exciting.
Now, the city says they currently have 130 snowplows that are deployed. Right now, it's not too cold, but it will be getting colder, and they say that that's when things will get a little bit more difficult. But they say they will be out around the clock, making sure that the roads are clear and hopefully everything cleaned up by Monday.
All right.
We'll bring staff and contractors back in tomorrow, and then that's when we start doing our cleanup work. We hit the residentials, the other roads, and we start cleaning up and getting everybody back to work for Monday.
The Hamilton Police, I also spoke to them. They, of course, are advising everyone to stay home if they can and to not get behind the wheel unless they have to. Now, this snowfall, it is expected to taper off later tonight, but as mentioned, up to 40 centimeters, 45 centimeters in some part. It's been snowing all day here in Hamilton. Maribel.
Good advice to stay off the roads tonight. Thanks for that, Kaillie. Meanwhile, in Toronto, the roads are slick, making traveling treacherous. Downtown, 2 pedestrians were struck in this 3-car crash at Lakeshore and Simcoe. 4 people were transported to hospital, including 2 with serious injuries. And out on the highways, provincial police say they have responded to at least 150 crashes so far. The snow is falling and the thermostat plummeting with the wind chill. It is going to feel closer to minus 31 tonight in Toronto. Let's check in with Lorenda Redekop, who is live now with the latest on the situation here in the city. Lorenda, a busy weekend for crews.
That's for sure, Maribel. City crews, they've been out all day. The city had 600 road plows ready today, another 300 to clear the sidewalks, and then 200 more for salting. Now, we're getting close now to that temperature, though, where it's too cold for the salt to actually work. Not there yet, but it feels much colder with the wind chills, and this on a night that's set to get even colder. On the coldest day of the year so far in Toronto, one charity packed 3,000 winter survival kits for the homeless. Organizations who work with people on the streets in this city requested more than 21,000. One single dad who lived on the streets before his son was born knows what it's like to have to ask for help.
Kind of embarrassing in a way, right? You're homeless now, right? So it's a whole new psychological effect, right? And so, but after a while you have to humble yourself, and then if you want to help, you have to do it.
This in a month when 2 homeless people have died. One woman tried to take shelter in a clothing donation box.
Another woman was run over by a garbage truck while sleeping in an alley. This cold snap comes after what's been an unusually mild winter so far.
The bottom's dropping out now, and we probably will wind up with an average January, because sure, we had 10 days of warm weather, but it's being compensated by a lot of cold weather now.
This is part of a larger system. In the United States, 115 million people in the Midwest and Northeast were under a winter storm warning. Back in Toronto this afternoon, people lined up for a survival kit. Amanda Stroud didn't know yet where she'd be sleeping tonight. She's had a hard time finding space in a shelter. Everything's full.
I might be able to get a bed here. I don't know. I've missed it the last 2 days. So.
As for those warm socks and gloves,
Yeah, it definitely keep me warm. It gives me hope, straight up.
Soon, people like her will have another option. A new all-women's shelter is set to open on Monday.
They want to have a space where they feel safe. And we do know that lots of women choose not to leave their home if they're in violent relationships for fear of homelessness.
Now, that women's shelter, it has space for 56 people, but advocates for the homeless, they're calling for another 1,000 shelter beds just to make this cold a little more bearable. Mariville, back to you.
Thanks so much for this. So how much more of this should we be bracing for? Let's bring in Sophia for the forecast. No real let up, it looks like, this weekend, Sophia.
Now, for many of you around the GTA, much of the snow will end by the time you head to the early morning hours on Sunday. But then Sunday is a story of bitter cold and blowing and drifting snow, because that's when the winds really ramp up. It'll last even longer as far as the heavy and moderate snow we're seeing east and north of the GTA, where the totals continue to be pretty hefty. Let's zoom in. Ground zero for the snow. As you saw there, where that extra lake enhancement continues to be that Hamilton to Niagara stretch, where the up to 30 or even more locally is expected. For those of you around the city of Toronto, that 5 to 15 is generally the case. And then the story for you will also be that of that bitter cold. Extreme cold warnings due to last into much of the weekend. It's actually pretty rare to have such a large storm being fed by Gulf moisture and also such dry, cold air. And I'm talking really cold. In fact, Ottawa, for example, this morning was the coldest capital city in the entire world. So incredible cold, incredible moisture. The two are clashing in quite a big way. Different storylines here. That heavy swath of snow is that Hamilton, Niagara, Golden Horseshoe story. Strong winds and blowing and drifting snow will be everybody's story tomorrow. Everywhere there's fresh fall and snow, it will be blowing and drifting quite a bit with winds up to 60 kilometers an hour. You want to make sure to really heed the cold warnings. This is the type of temperature, as you heard earlier, that frostbite can set in just a matter of moments. We'll talk about the travel disruptions and especially stateside when we return.
Some important information to come. Thanks, Sophia. Many broken hearts at a memorial today for one of the people killed in last week's bus crash in Ottawa. 57-year-old Judy Booth left behind a husband, 2 daughters, and a granddaughter. She was retired, but worked occasionally at the National Capital Commission. That's where she was on January 11th before getting on the double-decker bus that slammed into Westboro Station, killing 3 people. Her daughters spoke at today's celebration of life, prompting tears, but even some laughter.
And over the last week, we've heard your words about who our mom was to you guys. We've seen that she's been referred to as a warm and wonderful person, a bright light, and an amazing friend. And it's really nice to hear that our mom was all of these things, and we weren't just one biased family. But the woman you knew was just a fraction of the woman that we knew. And the things that she did for you guys was just who our mom was every day.
Booth was passionate about pipe bands and an avid player herself. Her bandmates and friends flooded the funeral home today for their somber goodbye.
My sign is for the mom. And I made it by myself, and my mom helped me. My mom cut out the cardboard, and I painted them in, and now they and we put sparkles on them too.
And she did a great job. This adorable girl boss was among hundreds of women and girls who braved the snow and cold for the 3rd annual Women's March. We will recap the event for you after the break. Bundled up and fueled by the fight for their rights, hundreds of people gathered downtown today for Women March On. The theme of the 3rd annual event was "We Will Not Go Back," and aimed to take a stand against provincial cuts and violence against women. Talia Ricci caught up with some of the marchers.
Their reasons for marching may differ.
I'm trying to end and stop rape culture.
Call an end to all forms of gender-based violence to ensure that consent comes first.
Most recently, we have seen homeless women die on the streets, specifically in very violent ways.
But the long list of reasons is also what united the hundreds of people who walked from City Hall to Queen's Park today for Women March On in Toronto.
The reason why a lot of people show up is because this march is intersectional. We're here for all the issues. All of the issues impact all of us.
Among the issues, government cutbacks. Organizers say the event was a chance to show the Doug Ford government that women will not return to the days when they enjoyed fewer rights than they do now.
The theme is no going back, and we will not go back, and we won't be erased.
This march started 3 years ago after the results of the U.S. presidential election. It has since gained quite a large momentum here in Toronto.
And also in other Canadian cities like Ottawa, where a similar theme unfolded, many braving the cold to deliver their message. Alongside the women leading the movement, men hoping to shape the definition of the word ally.
It's a verb, it's not a noun, and it requires action. So they have to be here today. They can't just say in words that they support women, but they're not at a march like this. It's very important.
And young ones looking to the future.
What does it say?
It says more gold buses.
And what does that mean to you?
It means that I think they should be equal against girls and boys.
We'd like people to walk away feeling empowered, feeling like they've got some more information about some people's lived experiences.
A feeling that seemed to be reflected by those who took to the streets. Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
Allegations of harassment by one of Canada's Olympic greats. Two-time bobsleigh gold medalist Kaillie Humphries revealed on CBC News Network that she has filed a harassment complaint with her sport's governing body.
In breaking down that process, in talking to other athletes who have been in this similar scenario, who have worked with these same people, I was able to start to piece together pieces. I was able to identify my feelings, exactly what they were, exactly when and how and who, and I was able to put together an entire picture. And then from that point, I was able to step forward and make the claim.
Humphries did not reveal what type of harassment she is alleging. A Bobsleigh Canada skeleton spokesperson has told CBC the organization is aware of the allegations, is taking them seriously, and has forwarded the complaint to an independent investigator. Another live shot for you. A look at the roads in downtown Toronto. We are still monitoring the intense winter storm. Snow coming down now. We will have your long-range forecast coming up a little bit later in the show. To the U.S. now, where today President Donald Trump unveiled a proposal aimed at ending a political stalemate that has led to a partial government shutdown. Trump says if the House Democrats approve funding for a border wall, he will extend protections for young people brought to the U.S. illegally as children and for those with temporary protected status. Trump said his proposal was reasonable.
Straightforward, fair, reasonable, and common sense, with lots of compromise.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi criticized the proposal even before the president introduced it at the White House. She said his proposal was, quote, not a good faith effort to help immigrants, and she said it could not pass the House. The partial government shutdown is heading into its second month. Well, today we opened our doors here at CBC to some of you, and I hosted a panel about journalism in the digital age, featuring some fellow CBC hosts. I'll share part of the conversation with you coming up. A live look from our harbor cam for you tonight. We've got some bone-chilling temperatures gripping the city. City crews are out by the hundreds with salt and snow trucks at the ready. But let's check in again with Sophia for a sense of whether we're in for the long haul or if there's some relief in sight next week.
Well, when we talk about long haul, how would more bitter cold and more potential of active weather sound? We've wet the whistle, wet our appetite here. For many of us in southern Ontario, we have remained unscathed when it comes to active weather and major snow. This is not the case this time, and interestingly enough, this is just the fringe, the northern fringe of this massive system, and boy is it packing a whammy. We are still watching heavy snow, especially around that Golden Horseshoe and then east of the city of Toronto, that will continue well into the overnight hours. For many of you in southern Ontario, this snow will end by the early morning hours on Sunday, and that is perfectly timed when the gustiest of winds will really begin to change and pick up. It will also be a northerly wind, so not only will it be blowing around that freshly fallen snow at about 50 to 60 kilometers an hour, it will also be bringing in more dry, Arctic-esque cold air. The extreme cold warning sure to last until the weekend. Unfortunately, this is not the kind of Sunday post-snowfall when you and the kids are going to get to go out and really build that snowman as I've been wanting for the past few weeks. This is the kind of temperature and feels like where exposed skin will freeze in a matter of just minutes. You couple that with some snow for some of you, especially in the Niagara region, that rivals anything you've seen in the past few years. The travel disruptions will be many, especially if you're headed along that 401 or QEW stretch around the Golden Horseshoe. You definitely want to postpone any non-essential travels, not only this evening, but into tomorrow as well. And it's not only crippling travel in our neck of the woods. Winter storm watches and warnings blanket the U.S. Northeast, where over 100 million people, including some of our major population centers, are affected by this massive winter storm. A quick snapshot at the rest of this evening. The snow, heavy at times, will continue until tomorrow morning. And then, yes, as does the bitter cold and the potential of more snow later on into the work week. Good luck and stay warm.
Good advice. Thanks, Sophia.
You're welcome.
We're going to do a winter throwback for you now. 20 years ago, around this time of year, Toronto was hit with a snowstorm, and if you were here, you might not have forgotten that the city called in the Army to help.
Tonight, the Army moves in. Another blizzard hits southern Ontario, and Toronto just can't cope. It might have people across this country shaking their heads, even rolling their eyes. Toronto's losing battle with winter this year. Well, today it turned into a Cold War, one the military is ready to help to fight.
They shut down the office, so I'm on my way out of here.
I've seen worse in Montreal. I can't believe the city can't get it together.
It's like it's only winter, it's just some snow.
There it is, January 14th, 1999. Then Toronto Mayor Mel Lastman calling in the troops, and the city became the butt of jokes for years to come and probably to this day. In the 2 weeks prior, over 100 centimeters of snow had fallen on the city, so 400 soldiers from Petawawa arrived in the city, hundreds more on standby. The next day, Lastman visited the base at Downsview and even got a chance to take a ride on a military vehicle himself. Because it's so cold outside, let's turn our attention to the great indoors. The annual Interior Design Show in Toronto highlights the latest trends and innovations from designers in Canada and around the world. And our Jelena Adzik went to check it out.
The Interior Design Show is teeming with designers from right across the country, and they are all pushing the boundaries. Of course, there are new products and new furniture, but also new ways of thinking about how we imagine our home life, as well as our work life. Undoubtedly, one of the biggest trends around right now has to do with how we organize our space. I'm talking about the Marie Kondo trend. You might have noticed her new show on Netflix, where she helps people to organize their space. And she's really tapped into our desire to simplify our lives by decluttering and minimalizing what we buy in the first place.
We actually prefer the term essentialism as opposed to minimalism.
Tell me why.
Well, minimalism is often associated with a kind of style, whereas essentialism is about distilling down all the necessary functional elements into only what is needed and nothing more.
Now, another big trend at the Interior Design Show has to do with advances in technology, showcasing everything from smart kitchens to innovative fireplace inserts and lighting sculptures like these, which benefit from advances in LED technology. That harsh blue light is gone, replaced with a soft glow that's still eco-friendly, but a lot more beautiful. Ultimately, Canadian designers are striving to help us appreciate our surroundings. They want us to ask, what is essential to you? And just get rid of the rest, because we could all do with a little bit more of a little bit less. From the Interior Design Show at the Metro Toronto Convention Centre, I'm Yelena Adzik for CBC News, Toronto.
Well, this weekend, we're welcoming you to the CBC Broadcasting Centre for our super fun, super fan event. It's a chance to meet the stars of some of your favorite shows. Today, I moderated a panel discussion about journalism with the National's Adrian Arsenault and Duncan McHugh, host of CBC Radio's call-in show, Cross Country Checkup. Here's some of our conversation. At CBC News, we hear from Canadians all the time asking us for the real story. And in this era of fake news, what are each of you doing on your programs to get the real story?
I think it's more important than ever that people have a chance to hear each other on the air. From someone from Cape Breton is talking, and someone from Alberta is talking, someone from Nunavut gets a chance to phone in. But not only hear each other, but really listen to each other. And that, I hope, is something that we're doing to combat fake news.
The thing is, for us, the notion of fake news or an untruth or getting the story wrong is this sort of thing that courses through everything we do, this terror of being wrong. We live with that every day, and I think what we take pride in, particularly with the National, but with CBC broadly, is that we have these exacting standards, which is not to say that mistakes won't be made, but boy, when and if they are made, we are accountable, we have to explain them, we have to correct them. Anytime you go on a CBC...
The panel also took questions from the audience and had a chance to meet and connect with our CBC fans. Our super fun Superfan Weekend continues tomorrow, and you're all invited. Go to cbcsuperfan.ca for free tickets and a chance to meet the dragons of Dragon's Den, the stars of Frankie Drake Mysteries, and Murdoch Mysteries, all tomorrow. And that's our show for you tonight. Thank you for watching. You can stay caught up on news anytime on our website, cbcnews.ca. Stay warm, everyone. Have a great night.